Good morning. I'm Dr. Ruddy. Welcome back to Herd Immunity, where wisdom is your best defense. I want to talk to you today about the confusing situation with regard to the Pfizer COVID vaccines. There are two vaccines, and there are two FDA designations for these two vaccines. There's been a lot of confusion about whether or not the FDA fully approved the Pfizer COVID vaccine or did it not. I had to do quite a bit of investigating. And although I can't be 100% sure, because you can never be 100% sure these days, this is what I think. I think that there is one vaccine, and the FDA is very clear about that, and Pfizer is very clear about that. There's one vaccine. In fact, that suggests, and this is a critical point, that suggests that there is one patent and one unique intellectual property related to that vaccine. Okay, so one vaccine, one patent, one piece of intellectual property, constructed into two separate entities. The first entity is the Pfizer vaccine we know and love, the BioNTech. And that was released under Emergency Use Authorization, EUA. And that's the one that's been out there and is on the shelves and probably in the warehouses waiting to be distributed and used. That vaccine, BioNTech, was framed within a specific legal business structure. So there were investors, God knows there were contracts, and bank accounts, and who knows what else, okay? Lots. So that's your first Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. That same exact formulation, which leads me to believe that this is the same patent and the same intellectual property, was reconfigured under a new, what appears to be a new business legal entity, Comirnaty. It appears that there are new relationships, new partners, new money, old money, who knows, okay? Think of these two vaccines as if the intellectual property was a book. So let's say To Kill a Mockingbird, okay? You can get To Kill a Mockingbird as an ebook. You can get it as a paperback, right? It's the same book. It's the same copyright. The IBIN number associated with the ebook is different than the IBIN number associated with the paperback, but the copyright is the same and the book is the same, okay? So the urban myth, I think, is understandable when it got going last week that the FDA didn't really fully approve the vaccine, that it extended the EUA on BioNTech, the first formulation, say the ebook, and then it granted full FDA approval for the paperback, Comirnaty. There are some nuances and intricacies that need to be appreciated here. First of all, the EUA on BioNTech, the ebook version of the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, that EUA was extended. So immediately I have a question. Is there an expiration date on that extension? Is that extension automatically rolling over like a U.S. Treasury that no one wants? Is Pfizer allowed, legally permitted, to continue to manufacture new product, the new BioNTech product, increase the supply chain of BioNTech under EUA? And remember that EUA provides Pfizer with immunity from product liability. So if you have a problem, that's really your problem. It's nobody else's problem but yours. The FDA approval, the full approval, okay, so the headline was the FDA has approved the Pfizer vaccine. That makes sense, actually, if we assume, and I think that this is a fair assumption, I'm calling all lawyers, that the patent is identical, that the intellectual property is identical, that the book is still the book, okay? So the FDA, in approving Comirnaty, that entity, was in fact approving the intellectual property, approving the patent, approving the vaccine, which would be manufactured, is being manufactured under the EUA and that extension. Same vaccine. Now, you could imagine that if you were the CFO or the CEO or whatever you were there in the C-suite of Pfizer, that you would want to, first of all, use up all of the supply that you presently have for your BioNTech. All that stuff that's sitting on the shelf in the warehouses hasn't been sold, maybe, might not ever get sold because there seems to be a stalemate with regard to vaccination now. But you would certainly want to push that as far into the future as you could. And you would certainly, if you were allowed to, you would want to continue to manufacture your product, your vaccine, under EUA because you're indemnified from any product liability. So you'd certainly want to go that route as long as possible. You use the new entity, okay, your paperback version, in order to declare that it's FDA approved, but you don't really start making that guy yet, okay, because that's not exempt from product liability. And so, yeah, you want to hold that back because you want to empty the supply that you already have, maybe increase the supply if that's permissible, and just hold back and be very happy that you have FDA approval on the same intellectual property, on the same vaccine. Now, the FDA did require, in that full approval process for this identical vaccine, the Comirnaty, that Pfizer conduct post-marketing surveillance of myocarditis, fertility issues, and so on and so forth. So the FDA is well aware of the VAERS data. They know myocarditis is not nothing. They're not making this up. Men in particular are unexpectedly suffering with acute myocarditis. There's reason to believe that that is not something that they will fully recover from forever, but that might predispose them to an early death, some kind of acute cardiac event. That seems to be the case in other cases of myocarditis. Stay tuned. We'll let you know how that works out. But the FDA is very well aware of the VAERS data, of the complications related to these vaccines, and has mandated that Pfizer conduct a close surveillance. Not only do they mandate it, but they said to Pfizer, we want in writing your plans for how you're going to do this, and here are the milestones, and here are the dates, and this surveillance, this post-marketing surveillance of your vaccine with regard to these known side effects and the discovery of other side effects needs to continue at least through 2025. The question is, does that apply to the EUA version, the ebook version? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Calling all lawyers, we need a patent attorney lawyer, intellectual property lawyer, and lawyers who are familiar with regulatory law, because Dr. Ruddy has a question here. Leave it to Dr. Ruddy to ask 10 questions, but here's the real question I want to know the answer to. If it's the same patent, if it's identical, if it is the same intellectual property, is it legal? We know it's not appropriate, but is it legal for the FDA to give two separate designations to the exact same thing? Is that legal? Can you do that? If it's the same patent, if it's the same formulation, if it's the exact same intellectual property, then it either is EUA or it's FDA approved. And I would suggest, going along this hypothetical line of questioning, that this might have been a clever attempt by very smart attorneys to create two entities for the same thing and pitch it as if it were two different books. the e-book of To Kill a Mockingbird is not really To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay? To Kill a Mockingbird is really the paperback or the hardback version. Okay? It's the same book. It's the same copyright. This vaccine, BioNTech and Comirnaty, same formulation, same patent, same intellectual property. Where does the FDA get off calling it two separate things and allowing it, excuse me, two separate lives, as it were? The happy life, where there's no problems and no product liability, or the unhappy life where, yeah, we will get around to, we'll give you, the post-marketing surveillance data as we get it, but we have no intention of post-marketing this because it'd be much better for us to just go with the EUA as long as possible. So normally I like to provide interesting and helpful information. Hopefully I have, but I am more interested today in putting out into the public domain these questions for our first responders, our attorneys. Can you please give us a hand here? We need some help. Until I see you again, remember the two best medicines are love and mercy. We're going to need a lot of both. God bless.